Should the Democrats be more moderate in the year 2025? It's an interesting question. Well, there are people who say that after Trump's victory over Kamala Harris, we've got proof that going too far left is bad, that Kamala Harris went too far left, and that the American public is turned off by the far left, and that's why Trump won. I think we should challenge that. I'm going to explain why I do not think that the Democratic Party needs to become more moderate necessarily, not on most issues. I'm going to steel man the case for why they should become more moderate, and I'm going to rebut it. So there are people who say that moderate Democratic candidates have done very well in the past. They will cite Bill Clinton in 1992, followed by 1996. His electoral vote counts were well over 300, almost 400. Of course, Bill Clinton, he gave the Republicans credit on plenty of things. He bragged about working with the Republicans, including Newt Gingrich, a very hard right guy who took over the House and the Senate in 1994 in the Republican Revolution. Bill Clinton, of course, agreed with Reagan on a number of things, although sometimes criticized the economic policy as trickle-down economics. But Bill Clinton, yeah, he was a moderate guy. He was part of the third way New Democrats. He triangulated. He took ideas from the Republican Party, such as welfare reform. Famously, he said, the era of big government is over. That's straight out of the Ronald Reagan textbook. I mean, it doesn't get more Republican than that. And yeah, he reformed welfare, as I said. He deregulated Wall Street. He signed the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, which repealed Glass-Steagall, which deregulated Wall Street. He was an environmentalist in some senses, but did not go full Green New Deal or anything like that. And he did try to get universal health care in the early 1990s. I think 1993 or 94. Hillary Clinton was a big part of that. So he's surprisingly progressive in a few areas, but for the most part, he just ran as this moderate guy. You know, he played the saxophone, he won people over, he was charismatic. He did the thing where he stuck his fist out, you know, like, doesn't this look friendly? So smooth talker, George H.W. Bush just came off as out of touch. But I would submit to you that it wasn't Bill Clinton's moderation that really helped him necessarily. Bill Clinton, of course, benefited in 1992 from a poor economy and from George H.W. Bush just coming off as out of touch. George H.W. Bush's foreign policy accomplishments had mostly been forgotten at that point. People were not thinking about the Gulf War. People were thinking about how they were going to put food on the table, how there was this recession, and how the Republicans had been in office in the presidency for 12 years or so, and they felt like they needed change. And that's just a common theme in American politics. People just think they need change. And in 1996, I mean, Bill Clinton, again, like, there was just a good economy. If Bill Clinton had been far left and the economy were still good, he could have still cruised to victory over Bob Dole. Bob Dole, of course, had problems with his age at the time. He was about 73, so younger than Joe Biden by several years. But yeah, he got one-upped by Biden in that regard. But Bill Clinton kind of took advantage of that. He took advantage of Newt Gingrich being unpopular and too conservative, arguably. So he bashed the conservatism to win over the American public. And yeah, then, there was the whole scandal and stuff, and Bill Clinton ends up sort of leaving the presidency with an all right approval rating, not great, not terrible, and George W. Bush gets elected. Obama gets elected, campaigning actually on a pretty staunchly progressive message, though. Let's keep that in mind. So Bill Clinton seems like this moderate guy. Oh, he's a moderate Democrat who did really well, but okay, you have to keep in mind Barack Obama. Now, Barack Obama, of course, said stuff that was centrist in the sense that it was like about uniting the American people. He said there's no red states or blue states, there's the United States. Like, hey, let's all get together. If he were really far left, he would straight up go out there and be like, red states are hellholes, they're terrible, blue states are where it's at. Red states defund education, and that's horrible. They defund healthcare. They're bad states to live in. They're too conservative. But he focused on uniting people. But at the same time, he advocated for aggressive healthcare reform, getting out of Iraq and Afghanistan, raising the minimum wage even, which is something that has not been done actually since George W. Bush's presidency. The federal minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour. $7.25. Plenty of states are higher than that, but yeah, the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. No Democrat has swung left enough as to raise the minimum wage federally. Also, so if we're going to say Bill Clinton did a great job as a moderate candidate who won, we also have to look at the staunch, unapologetic progressives, like actual hardcore leftists who won. So FDR is a great example of this. FDR won in 1932 against Herbert Hoover. He campaigned as a very progressive guy. He was like, look, we need to bring government into people's lives, to help people's lives in times like these, the Great Depression. Now, the Great Depression thing, that does provide a potential counter-argument towards Democrats being progressive. You could say that, oh, well, the Great Depression just ruined Herbert Hoover and helped FDR. It didn't matter what FDR's policies were or what he was campaigning on because the economy was horrific. It was in shambles. People were in breadlines. Things were terrible. So, of course, they're going to vote against the incumbent, Herbert Hoover. But, I mean, really, FDR enacted progressive policy that gradually ameliorated the Great Depression. It also did, of course, help that there was massive spending during World War II, and that was not necessarily the New Deal. So Adolf Hitler's terrible behavior arguably helped pull America out of the Great Depression. Unfortunate as it is to sort of feel like I'm giving Hitler credit. But yeah, the World War II and the war effort helped stimulate the economy greatly, but also FDR's economic programs, they were very popular. Social Security, enacted in the mid-1930s, is very popular. He created all of these government agencies that many Americans approve of. So he enacted the minimum wage as well. He functionally ended child labor. So he was an activist, leftist president, a guy who served 4 terms. Was elected 4 times, I should say, and served for a few months of his 4th term before dying of a stroke and Harry Truman taking over. But staunchly progressive guy, popular. Every single election he won was a landslide to one degree or another, most notoriously 1936, after he had done Social Security and all of that economically progressive stuff. He continued to be economically progressive, and Truman entered office with a high approval rating. So Truman's another example of how progressivism pays off for Democrats. In 1948, people didn't think he would win, and yet he did. He beat Tom Dewey. He beat Thomas Dewey because he campaigned on values. He campaigned on a vision, actual policy, like, hey, I want to improve your life. The Republicans, he said, they just call everything they don't like socialism. Well, you know what? They're calling these programs that help the American people socialism. They just want to help the rich. If you help the poor or the middle class, they accuse you of being a socialist, but yet they're stuffing the pockets of the rich with all sorts of money. Why do they do that? And he said, yeah, they're in the pockets of the donors. So it was that, and combined with his strategy of calling out the Republican Congress, saying, they're the do-nothing Congress, they don't get anything done, they're blocking me in my amazing fair deal, I believe his program was called. So again, a staunch progressive. This guy, not as left-wing as FDR, and he did appoint some conservatives to the Supreme Court, but he really was progressive in his rhetoric, and that is a W, I think, for progressive Democrats, for Democrats who want to campaign as progressives. 1964, I think, LBJ was a very left-wing president. He got elected after JFK died. But at the same time, even though I would say he's very left-wing and that him being progressive on economics and civil rights helped out, I have to admit that I think JFK's assassination helped him because the nation was sad that this young, charming guy was gunned down, and they felt loyal to the Democratic Party. They felt sorry for LBJ. And yeah, they voted for LBJ. As a result, he won in a landslide. Barry Goldwater, also staunchly conservative. A lot of fears about him being way too pro-war, pro-nuclear war even. So people sided against him big time. Let's look at the modern day Democrats. Did Kamala Harris actually run too far to the left? The answer is no. The answer is no. She campaigned on being tough on the border. She campaigned on being tough on crime. A prosecutor against a convicted felon in the Republican Party, no less. So yeah, she was not pandering to the defund the police, to the ACAB crowd, to the no human is illegal crowd. No, she was pandering to centrist or center-left people. And yeah, you could say that she did a bad job of riling up the progressive base and getting them ready to vote for her. Think about her Israel stance. She was less pro-Israel than President Biden, but was she really standing up for Gaza? Did she really give people who support Gaza a good reason to vote for her? People whose number one issue is Gaza, for better or for worse? No, she did not. No, she did not offer enough change to the status quo. She was tarred with incumbency, and the incumbency's policies vis-a-vis Israel and Gaza were not good for Gaza. So many Arabic Americans and Muslim Americans defected. They either did not vote for her, or some of them even straight up admitted on video, I'm going to vote for Trump, basically to get back at the Biden administration. So Kamala Harris really was not that progressive. Joe Biden in 2020 actually was more progressive, you could argue. He campaigned on raising the minimum wage. He campaigned on stuff like mask mandates, really aggressive policies to get us out of COVID. The American Rescue Plan, which he of course signed. He campaigned on things like paid family leave, a very aggressive climate change agenda. Now, did these things really help him win? I don't know. I think it's a wash when you compare his policies with the circumstances of the country. We were in a pandemic. The economy was not excellent, even if it was not Great Depression level, and people just felt like voting against Trump. There was a massive backlash against Trump. So now, of course, there's a massive backlash against Kamala Harris and the Democrats, and people usher Trump back in. So is it really a win for progressivism lately? Maybe not. Maybe not. But is it really a win for being a moderate? I just don't know. Hillary Clinton was one of the most moderate candidates the Democrats have ever run. She had voted for the Iraq War. She made fun of environmentalists. She was not pro-universal health care. She was not pro-free college. She just criticized Trump. She wagged her finger at him for being too divisive and unhinged. She was not overly aggressive in her climate change policy either. Her foreign policy is something that pissed off a lot of non-interventionist leftists, especially regarding Syria, the no-fly zone thing. Just an unpopular, corrupt figure that was far too moderate. There's nothing interesting about Hillary Clinton to progressives. She also snubbed Bernie Sanders. And I know snubbing someone is not necessarily a policy, but Bernie Sanders was the other option. And Hillary Clinton made sure to distinguish herself from Bernie Sanders, saying, oh yeah, I'm pretty progressive, but I'm not far left like him. And Bernie Sanders really isn't even that far left. We also need to talk about Bernie Sanders. We need to go into what he's been doing lately. So he's been going around on this Stop Oligarchy tour, and the Stop Oligarchy thing is referring to the relationship between President Trump and Elon Musk. President Trump, of course, is letting Elon Musk run the federal government, basically, the IRS, all that stuff. He's letting Elon Musk dismantle the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, a very populist, progressive program set up under Obama. By the way, before Obama got reelected. So that was under his belt. That progressive reform was under his belt before he got reelected. So make of that what you will in terms of it helping him. So Bernie Sanders is like, hey, there's clear corruption going on here. It's bolstering the oligarchy, this thing that Trump's got going on with Musk. I'm going to go around the country. I'm going to give speeches. I'm going to rile people up, get people excited, get people, pissed off, basically. Like, hey, look at what's happening to our government. This is not democracy. This is oligarchy. Democracy is what matters. Donald Trump criticizes people on the left, Democrats, and even fellow Republicans for being too much in the pockets of their donors, too much in the pockets of the elites, and yet Trump's got the richest person on earth as his buddy, working in the federal government, unelected. So he's making all these salient points against President Trump from the left, not from the right. He's not saying, oh, Trump is too anti-war. I wish you would start more wars. I wish you were a neocon, or something like that. Or I don't like his stance on trade. I support free trade. So he's not doing that. He's not out there bellyaching about Trump being against the institutions or anything. Only insofar as he's dismantling the institutions with Elon Musk and putting him in there is he criticizing Trump for being against the institutions, and specifically the institutions that help regular Americans. Again, the CFPB, the IRS, USAID. Like, what is going on here? So Bernie Sanders is shining a light on that, and thousands of people are showing up to see his speeches. This is the guy who, of course, campaigned on universal health care, $15 minimum wage. Now he would probably say even more because of inflation. Free college for all, Green New Deal. So just an aggressive progressive, you could say. I don't think he's going to be the nominee in 2028. I don't think that because of his age he will run in 2028. But Democrats should reconsider the idea of being more moderate. They should. There are people in their party who are saying we need to be more like Trump, we need to be more conciliatory, and I think those people are wrong. I get where they're coming from. I get that Bill Clinton did really well as a moderate president. He did really well in the Electoral College. He staved off the Republicans, and he got some stuff that was progressive done. But look at John Kerry. I mean, that guy, that guy was sort of moderate in the sense that, he was pro-Iraq war, but he didn't like the way that George W. Bush was handling it. But he also flip-flopped a lot. And that's another caution I have for the Democrats is do not flip-flop, or do not make it extremely obvious that you're flip-flopping. So if you are a moderate Democrat and you want to pivot to become a progressive, make sure to acknowledge that you've changed your opinion and explained why. So if you formerly were not for raising the minimum wage and you want to campaign on raising the minimum wage, do that, but acknowledge, hey, I've read more research on the minimum wage. I've grown to understand that as it stands, the minimum wage is not enough for a person to afford a one-bedroom apartment. It's not enough for families to get by. This is insane. The federal minimum wage is $7.25. That's far too low. And I realized I was wrong for being against raising it before. That is what Democrats should do. Democrats should not flip-flop. Democrats should not play hide the ball. They should be transparent. They should say, I had these opinions. I changed my opinions because of all this. Give your reasoning. Now, of course, some people might say, oh, that won't work either, because as Ronald Reagan once said, and I think he was right about this, if you're explaining, you're losing, you know? It's kind of this idea of how with the American people, they just want to hear what they want to hear. They don't want to hear what they don't want to hear. So when you're saying what they don't want to hear, but then you're explaining why, it's not a good look. You already said what they don't want to hear. You're in hot water. Say the popular stuff. Now, as for popularity, that's something that's important because there are plenty of progressive positions that are popular. There are a handful that are unpopular. There are conservative positions even that are popular, believe it or not. A lot of them are unpopular. So tax cuts for the wealthy, that's unpopular. People are sick of the elites. War with Mexico, not popular. War with Greenland, war with Panama, gutting administrative agencies. None of these things are popular. People are not happy with Elon Musk and his Doge government cuts. They just don't like that. So call out the unpopular Republican positions. Democrats should be careful not to embrace unpopular far-left positions. They do exist. Defund the police exists. You may agree with defund the police. If you do, you are entitled to that opinion. But it does not pull well with the American public. We can advocate for reforms for the police, for more transparency, for better training for the police, without calling to defund the police or saying all cops are bastards. That is even worse. So, or abolish the police, even worse than that. So stay away from that type of stuff. I do not think that resonates with people at all. I think it's unpopular. I think if the year were 2020, maybe things would be a little different. But we're in 2025. There's not this fever pitch, for police reform, this big obsession with that. Sometimes stuff is just hot and sometimes other stuff is hot. And yeah. So criminal justice is an important issue, but careful not to run too far to the left on it. Gender stuff. Again, I don't think the American people support transgender rights very broadly. They do. There are certain avenues that you can go down in your advocacy for transgender rights that I think could alienate some people. You have to be very careful about the way that you phrase things, the way that you suggest things. You don't want to come off incendiary or come off like you're suggesting that, gender doesn't matter at all. American people, we should just live in a genderless society. I support gender abolition. That's just not going to resonate with people. You're free to believe that in your head, but the American people are not there. The American people are not on board with gender abolitionism. But yeah, broadly speaking, the American people support socially progressive values. They support same-sex marriage. Everyone except for a majority of Republicans who apparently don't support it. They support transgender rights. They support BLM. They do. Broadly speaking. Obviously, if you interpret certain narrow things within BLM, people are more hesitant, like the ACAB thing and defund the police and abolish the police. People care about immigrants. They are not, mass deportations actually were shown to be more popular lately, but I do not think that they will remain popular going into the Trump presidency. I think that people will see, oh, shoot, mass deportations are gutting our workforce, just like those mass firings at the federal agencies. Mass deportations are raising our prices. So there is going to be a backlash to that. I think we can be fairly certain about that. Mass deportations might feel good, like, oh, hey, we're upholding the law and order. Thank you, convicted felon president, for upholding law and order. But yeah, I don't think Trump's honeymoon phase is going to last. I think that once the midterms roll around, the Democrats will have an all-you-can-eat buffet of things to attack. They'll be able to just eat their hearts out. But at the same time, it's like, we don't want to be too moderate. We don't want to be too far left. We want to criticize Trump's policies, but we also want to stand for things, stand for an affirmative vision. It's interesting too. There are some moderate Democrats who actually are harsher on Trump than the further left Democrats, and you would think the further left Democrats would be bigger critics of Trump because they disagree with him even more on policy. But it sort of makes sense that moderate Democrats would still be highly critical of Trump. You can do that. You can be like, hey, I don't think that what Trump's doing is necessarily, fascism or crony capitalism or anything like that, but I despise the way that he's going after our institutions. I think that his presidency is unprecedented. I think he's got an absurd amount of corruption going on here, and he just needs to be called out about that. Whereas people on the hard left, there are some people on the hard left who actually are like, oh, I don't like the institutions. I'm anti-establishment, and so I don't mind Trump and his boisterous behavior and how rude and obnoxious and how much of an outsider he acts like. So, yeah, there's a lot of politics makes for strange bedfellows, if you know what I mean. Sometimes the people attacking each other, attacking certain groups, certain factions within certain parties are not the people that you would expect. So Democrats have a lot of calculus to do coming into 2026. Ultimately, I think that a center-left or substantially left-of-center vision is the way to go. I think that being more moderate is not the way to go. I think that being moderate has cost the Democrats quite a bit. I think that in some ways, President Obama's more moderate second term than his first term might have helped Trump win in 2016. And Hillary Clinton's moderate platform sure as heck did not help her in terms of defeating Trump, the most far-right candidate in 2016, and now in 2024, running on an even more far-right platform and defeating Kamala Harris, who likewise, similar to Hillary Clinton, ran fairly moderate and only staunchly progressive on a few issues. Let me know what you think in the comments below about whether or not the Democrats should be more moderate or more progressive in 2025. We're going to play it by ear. We're going to play it by ear. We're going to look at the news. We're going to look at what's popular because we have to analyze that stuff. Politicians usually campaign on what they personally believe in, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes they have to ride the tidal wave of public opinion, and they have to look at what's popular, and they have to self-censor. They have to moderate their message or spice up their message depending on what they see is more or less popular. So yeah, is it being a follower to be like, oh, let me see what's trendy, what types of political opinions are popular right now? Maybe. But if you want to get elected, if you want to make change, if you want to beat the Republicans and stop their far-right agenda and the MAGA agenda, sometimes you do have to just say what's popular. You could campaign as a moderate and enact policies like a progressive when you get into office. It's possible. There's no law stopping you from doing that. But I don't know even if campaigning as a moderate is necessarily helpful. I just don't know that. Do you think that it is? Let me know in the comments. Please like, comment, or subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. This has been the More the Merrier, and I look forward to speaking to you in my next video.